the way the tailings pile is built, they start with a layer on the ground, and they pile layers on progressively until you've got something like 1,000 feet of tailings pile. And the water gets rained on the top, and the mine water that's put into the lakes to evaporate, some of that gets soaked in, and eventually the water that starts at the top will come out the bottom. And the mining companies don't run their models long enough that they have to tell people that. When Rosemont was doing their modeling for the Rosemont mine, they produced a model for the draft environmental impact statement, and we argued that they didn't run the model long enough. Instead of just normal rain cycle, we forced them to put in a pulse, a big major pulse of water, and run the model. Well, it turned out, and the model looks at the bottom, so it measures how much water is leaking through, and this pulse came through in 8 years. And everybody's horrified. It's like, wow, okay. And that water is really, really dirty. And it's okay to be dirty, according to the state, as long as it's not too dirty. Well, you know, the rules are made by the state, but back when mining companies were running the state. So as you can imagine, even though now the mining companies will say, we do everything within the regulations, but they wrote the bloody regulations, so this isn't really doing the right thing. But just like copper exists in a variety of copper minerals, there's lead in the rock, and the rock itself, when it's the deep part of the rock, has the same amount of lead and copper. Well, nobody needs lead. Lead is 100% recycled, and it's used for car batteries. It's not going to be used anymore for car batteries because we use lithium now. So there's no use for lead. They could separate it, they can float it, they could do it and collect it and sell it, but they don't. So it goes into the tailings pile. Well, copper, you know, it's slightly nasty in natural water. If it goes above a certain level, it starts killing the fish and stuff. Lead is a disaster. I mean, it is a disaster, and we know so much about it because it's been studied for decades, very sophisticated studies, and we know exactly what it does to kids in growing, and it is really bad news. So the mining companies, and I'm sure they have done this intentionally, they don't report lead in their analyses when they're forced to publicize an analysis. Anyway, the lead ends up in the tailings pile. So when the wind blows and the tailing pile is dry, that dust goes everywhere. And Green Valley periodically has dust storms coming off the west side tailings piles and literally covering people's property. The county has purview over the dust. And so they will fine Freeport whenever there is an excessive dust. But the fine is, you know, it's like $50,000. And they will also, under pressure, pay or force the mine to pay for people to come around and clean up your yard. But we know that, you know, that's almost an impossible job. I mean, it's in the mesquite trees. I mean, the thought that you could clean that. So we're running a little village that I'm sure has excess lead everywhere. And we don't know about it because the mines don't talk about it. The Environmental Protection Agency knows about this problem, and they require every mine to report the amount of lead that goes into the tailings pile every year. And that seems like a wonderful thing, but the way they report the data, the EPA reports the data by state. So there are, 17 copper mines in Arizona. Each one of them individually has reported the amount of lead that goes into the tailings pile every year, and the EPA then aggregates that to a state thing. And I mean, it's bloody huge, but I would love to know, and one of my hopes for our Santa Rita Guardian group is to get somebody to kind of dig into EPA and see if they can unscramble that data and get the data mine by mine. And then we can know, well, where is the lead? And that's a problem that is not even talked about.